All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning back in. Today, I've got a topic that I've gotten asked multiple times since I started the YouTube channel, and it has to do with when do you throw a chatterbait versus a spinnerbait? So, that's sounds like two baits that are completely interchangeable, but I don't believe they are, in my opinion. I mean, you can definitely catch fish in the same conditions, but I do have periods when I specifically like to throw a chatterbait and I specifically like to throw a spinnerbait. So before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys that if you have not subscribed to the channel yet, please hit that subscribe button. It gets you entered into my monthly drawings for prizes. So if you watch the videos on a regular basis, guys, there's no reason not to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you hear little chicks chirping, it's because they are right over here and they're starting to get a little active. I don't know what they're doing in there right now. Anyways, guys, so the other thing is if you want to support the channel, go into my description, go to the realshot.com link. If you buy tackle from them, you support the channel. You can use the discount code Stefan10 and you get 10% off your entire order. So if you're looking for tackle, check out therealshot.com. Description's in the link. Okay, so to get to today's topic, when do you throw a spinnerbait? When do you throw a chatterbait? And like I said before, they are interchangeable baits, but there are definitely times I feel like one excels over the other. So let's start with the chatterbait. The first is if you're fishing grass, the chatterbait is truly one of the best grass baits ever made. It is extremely weedless, and you get the best reaction bites by letting that bait get down into the grass. You can rip it free, and you get those reaction strikes. A spinnerbait, on the other hand, is also a good grass bait, but it's really only a good grass bait for trying to bring over the top of the grass. Because if you let it get down into the grass, the blades will get caught up, and at that point, you have a lot of casts that end up being wasted casts because the bait's not running the right way. I do like to throw a spinnerbait over the tops of grass if there's a shad spawn going on, but if I had my choice when fishing grass, I would definitely choose the chatterbait. It just seems like it's a great bait for fishing around grass, and it's an extremely efficient grass bait. The next would be during post-front conditions. I like to throw a chatterbait in post-front conditions. When fishing is the toughest, I feel like the chatterbait gets really good reaction strikes, and it has to do with the erratic motion that you're putting into that bait when you're retrieving it. You're constantly ripping it out of grass or just trying to get it to do something different. The blade on it as it's going, sometimes it'll, veer off to one direction. It creates reaction strikes. During tough conditions, post-front conditions, that's what you need to do a lot of times to generate strikes is you have to count on erratic motion to get those fish to react to it without necessarily wanting to eat your bait. And I think a chatterbait does that better than a spinnerbait. If I'm fishing a lake that doesn't have shad, I choose the chatterbait over the spinnerbait. And that just has to do with the fact that I think a chatterbait is a better panfish mimicker. Bluegill, perch. If you're fishing around those species of fish, and that's a primary forage species, I think a chatterbait does a much better job in mimicking them. And part of that is, you can kind of match the hatch a little bit better, but it has more to do with the fact that bluegill and perch, yes, they will roam in schools, but they're still more isolated fish, whereas shad are much more school orientated, and that's where the spinnerbait comes in. It's a bait ball in itself. But if you're fishing around bluegill, there's a lot of isolated bluegill swimming around, and on lakes where bass are looking to feed on panfish, when you rip a chatterbait, through them and you create that that reaction strike, those bass are waiting for a little bluegill to swim by, and not necessarily a bait ball because they're not as used to it. Now, again, I'm not saying a spinnerbait won't work in lakes that don't have shad. It very much will. I just prefer to go with a chatterbait in those scenarios. The last time, the last big difference with the chatterbait and the spinnerbait, kind of more is seasonal. And again, people are going to argue with me on this. Generally, though, I think a chatterbait excels more than a spinnerbait from early pre-spawn into the early part of the summer. And then the spinnerbait kind of starts excelling more in that later portion of the summer into the fall. Both baits clearly will work in all of the seasons, all seasons of the year. I just personally feel like I have more success with the chatterbait early in the year, and the spinnerbait excels better late in the year. So let's point out some of the times I prefer the spinnerbait over the chatterbait. If I'm fishing open water, the spinnerbait is a better open water bait than a chatterbait. Like I said before, a spinnerbait is made to create that bait ball look. And therefore, a lot of times if you're fishing open water, you've got fish that are looking for bait fish and a bait ball to swim by. So if I'm just fishing open water, I'm fishing suspended fish, I will take a spinnerbait any day of the week over a chatterbait. That's one reason you see a lot of people talk about how good a spinnerbait is for smallmouth bass. Those fish are suspended, looking up. Same thing with spotted bass. Spinnerbait is a great spotted bass bait. I also choose the spinnerbait if I'm fishing hard cover. So if I'm fishing around laydowns or dock posts or just any sort of hard cover, the spinnerbait is a much more weedless bait when you're fishing hard cover than a chatterbait. And I feel like I can be more efficient and generate more strikes from the spinnerbait because I can do more with it. I love to bring a spinnerbait up and over laydowns and then let it flutter down the other side. It's a great way to generate strikes, and I can't necessarily do that with the chatterbait because a lot of times when I try to bring it up over that log, I get stuck on the log with the chatterbait. So, anytime I'm fishing hardcover, I prefer the spinnerbait over the chatterbait. I think a spinnerbait is a much better night fishing bait. Again, it just gives off a lot of vibration. It's a big bait. You can put big blades on it. So, I think if you talk to a lot of the guys that are big night fishermen, they'll say a big spinnerbait is probably the best bait that you can use for night fishing. Some giant fish are caught on it. If I'm fishing rivers or if I'm fishing current, I prefer a spinnerbait over a chatterbait because of the fact that the blades will continue to spin better in current than a chatterbait. I feel like a lot of times with a chatterbait, if I'm fishing heavy current, the bait will hit periods where it doesn't run right because the current will kind of just throw the bait off and not allow it to swim properly. With a spinnerbait, that's not the case. You always will have those blades moving regardless of how the current hits the bait. And therefore, I like a spinnerbait on rivers. I catch a lot of really nice fish fishing current with a spinnerbait. So, those are the main differences, guys. Like I said before, they are interchangeable baits to a point. They're both great baits. They catch a giant fish. But there are times when I feel like a chatterbait will outfish a spinnerbait and a spinnerbait will outfish a chatterbait. So I hope this was helpful. This is, just me. I'm sure a lot of you out there will disagree with what I said in this, but it seems like those are the periods that work best for me. So next time you go to reach in to your tackle box to get a chatterbait or a spinnerbait, I hope this helps you make the decision and make what I think would be the correct decision. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, share it on your social media pages, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. New videos coming out every day. Thanks for watching.